Hi, this is Joe Speaks Truth. Just 3 years ago, New York City was placed under the harshest lockdowns out of the whole country. While things seem that they're going back to normal, I want to invite you all to listen to the untold stories of the many New Yorkers that had to survive lockdowns and vaccine mandates. Hello everyone, this is Joe Speaks Truth, and today with me I have Raquel. Raquel is an occupational therapist and has been in the field for 15 years. Raquel, how are you doing today?
I'm well, relatively speaking.
Well, I'm excited to have you here just because we know that for the past few years in New York City, we have been dealing with mask and vaccine mandates, and a lot of us were affected. Well, technically, I think everyone was affected except that a few of us put up the resistance, and because of that, we were punished. So, but before we get into that, I want to ask you, what was the motivation behind you becoming an occupational therapist?
That's a loaded question. Ever since I was little, I felt that I was meant to serve. Like, I can even remember a pivotal moment when I was 3.5 years old where I knew I had to serve and help the vulnerable. So that's just carried on throughout my life so far, and I just want to do more and more to be of service.
Have you lived in New York City your whole life?
No, not my whole life. My formative years till the age of 12. Moved to Florida, came back after grad school, and have been back home since.
Were you ever planning on doing more with your career, doing other things? And how was your life before 2020?
Before 2020, I was planning bigger things for my life, but I had the stability of a good paying job that I enjoyed for the most part. I didn't enjoy the bureaucracy of working for the Department of Education. Here, there's so much bureaucracy, and it affected how I could serve the families that I meant to serve, the children. But I had a comfortable place where I could do some of the work that I really needed to do. And, I was making my foundation so that way when I launched myself, I wouldn't feel as stressed because I had a good foundation, a good savings to do the things that I feel I'm meant to do, that I'm called to do.
Right. When we were told, because I also worked in the Department of Education, I was paraprofessional. When we were told that we had to work from home because of the pandemic and that it was only going to take 2 weeks, what was your initial reaction to that?
I was still, I don't want to say that I was a believer in everything, all the chaos, but I was just like, okay, well, this is going to be brief. This is just to make sure we're okay, and we'll be back with the kids. But then once we were home, I was like, something just doesn't feel right about this. It really doesn't feel right.
And as time went by, and you see that we're still not going back to work, what do you think was going to happen to your job? Or should I say, like, the way that you were able to provide service? Because then I'm assuming in your case, just like my case, we were working through like Google Classroom, right? And obviously, I feel like, how am I supposed to help a child through the video screen or whatever? How are we supposed to do that? So especially in your case, you were working with special needs children. I'm assuming some of them were not even verbal, right? Correct?
I actually had my caseload, the kids were verbal, high functioning autism, but they struggled socially. And I just noticed certain behaviors starting to manifest, which concerned me. I did my best to make it fun, to include the family. I would check in on the family. I would drive to their houses and drop off things so that way they would have materials and we could be consistent with their therapy. But I also noticed some of the children having more outbursts. I even noticed that some of them started developing like eye tics because they were on the screens all day. So I was really concerned. I mean, I was grateful that at least I was able to work. I knew people at that time that had lost their jobs because,
Of the
the
lockdowns.
lockdowns, they couldn't work. I was grateful I had work, and I was grateful that I could still reach out and connect with children. But, it was very worrying to be stuck at home, confined at home. I felt imprisoned in many ways. And if I felt that way, what about children that need to run, jump, play, and they're stuck at home all day behind a screen, their parents behind a screen? It was very stressful for a lot of the kids. So I worried for them, and I did what I could within my limited capacity to support them, not only them, but the families as well.
When was that breaking point that you said, wait a minute, this is not okay? When did you start doing your research? When did you realize, like, oh, this kind of seems like the government is just basically trying to destroy people's lives?
Yeah, well, I've kind of felt like that all my whole life. Always questioning things. I was the one who would watch a movie and say, I think they're telling us something here. And I would have friends that'd be like, Raquel, stop thinking crazy. And I was always a misfit because I always thought differently. I would see things and thought differently about the same situation, whereas more people who conform to the narrative, the well accepted narrative, we would just clash a lot. So I was a misfit, and I was often alone. So when this happened, it pushed me to be more cathartic, more introspective. But I would say when it really hit me was after, I think, one of the doctors, I don't know if it was Dr. Kaufman, one of the doctors posted something about Fauci saying that what we're experiencing now is nothing more than the flu, something to that degree, in the New England Journal of Medicine. So when I heard that, and this was maybe like 2-3 weeks in, I was like, so why are we locked down? Why can't we live our lives? Why can't I be with the kids that I work with? This doesn't make any sense. So then I kept on looking for other people who were asking the same questions, and then sharing more information, and kept on. And I would say it really, really hit me a month after we were locked down. Like, it hit me hard, where I had intense anxiety and was fighting depression because I just knew something was so wrong about this.
Right. It's funny that you mentioned that because, for example, in my case, I knew from like the very beginning, like, this is not right. And, like when you start to speak out, I don't know about you, but we can get into that. I experienced like opposition on Facebook because in February 2020, I was telling people that this is not normal, something, it's off. And I felt like, listen, if you want to stay home and not work, you do that. But I'd rather be at work. I'd rather be on a cruise. I'd rather go live my life. Why should I have to stay home? Because I'm not scared of a virus. I'm not scared to die. When it's my time to die, I'm gonna die anyways. And like, I feel like the government should have no say so in how I choose to live my life. And so, when was that time also that you decided to publicly, state your opinion? Did you experience opposition from families, friends, and even coworkers?
Yeah, not so much my immediate family. My immediate family was kind of used to me being the outsider and questioning things.
The black sheep, I guess.
Kind of like the black sheep, but my family, actually, we're all kind of black sheep in our own way, like my immediate family. So they weren't surprised, and they may not have listened, not all of them, but they may not have like listened with great attention, but they were just like, yeah, what you're saying makes sense. My mother, thankfully, would constantly ask me questions, and then she would be like, something's not right. Like, I don't like this at all. And I remember there was a time where she said, they said that they're going to have hours in the supermarket for the older population, the elderly population, to go food shopping so they would feel safe. I can't help but wonder if they're going to be spraying stuff in the supermarket while we're all there, so that way the elderly people die sooner. So this is my mom. And I said, Mom, that's totally plausible with all the things that this government has done for so long. Definitely plausible. So she's like, yeah, I'm going to go when everyone else goes. So, I'm grateful that my immediate family didn't ostracize me. Now, I had distant relatives that did, but I was able to ignore them. Friends that I thought were really good friends, um, were the vitriol coming out of their mouths was ridiculous. Even though I'm the one presenting scientific data, look, just read it, just read it. They refused and basically were like, virtually beating me up because this was on Facebook. No one wanted to hang out with each other, obviously, because they were all scared. And I remember I even posted, listen, walking 20 minutes a day really does help. Like, look at the studies. And I had a friend, I thought she was my friend. She was like, you're such a disgrace. How can you tell someone to walk 20 minutes a day and that's going to help them? Like, you make me like sick. And I was just like, what? So, she was coming from a place of fear. And she's a history teacher, mind you. So she really didn't even know her history. And I said, I think you need to go back and study your history.
Right. That's I'm glad that you mentioned that because one time I said, I don't understand these people working the school system. Granted, I worked in it too. I'm like, especially the history teachers. So you sit there, tell the kids about the Holocaust, slavery, every other genocide, war, or whatever, but you don't see how we got to that point because I mean, last time I checked, I don't think Nazi Germany happened overnight. There's certain steps that they take. And some people might think that we're being too extreme, but these are the steps of genocide. In order for them to turn the population against one another, they had to dehumanize those that are standing up against the tyranny in order to get away with it to the point that the government doesn't need to release the state police because the people themselves, your neighbors, your family members, friends, will themselves act like the state police.
Yeah.
So they will do the job for them.
Exactly. So when we were able to go back into the schools after the lockdowns,
right.
It was so odd. It was very eerie to be there. And everyone was like, did you get COVID? Are you going to do this? Are you going to do that? Are you going to get the shot before all that, before the actual vaccine came out? They were already like gearing up for that. And I remember like I couldn't even leave my room the way I wanted it to. They would come in and they're like, you need to have your windows down a certain way. You need to do this. You need to do that. I couldn't hug the children. And I was the one that if the kids needed a hug, they always came to me. Like that was not a problem. And the teachers would even get upset pre-COVID because they said I was spoiling the kids. Meanwhile, I'm all about the tough love, but when the kids really need the nurturing, I'm there. So then when we came back and I knew the kids really needed the nurturing, I was being watched. And I even told one of my coworkers who's Jewish, and I said, I feel like the Gestapo is here in the building. And she looked at me and she says, how dare you use that? And I said, how dare I know or actually have a pretty decent grasp of history because I really studied Nazi Germany. Really. I sat with several professors. I sat with a rabbi to learn more about the psychology of it. And I remember even telling the rabbi and my professors, this is going to happen again. And this was 20 years ago. I said, this is going to happen again. And I think it's going to be worse. And I remember the rabbi said, it's totally plausible. And here we were, fast forward. And I had this other OT, Jewish. How dare you? How dare I what? Really know history? Not emote that a certain group of people were targeted. Now everyone's being targeted.
Right.
Like, did you not learn from your ancestors?
No, they don't learn. And I'm glad that you mentioned that because I remember I received backlash. I went to a kosher Jewish restaurant in Maryland after the Defeat the Mandates that were held, the first one in Washington, D.C. Curtis wanted to go, so I went. He said he had a medical and religious exemption. And one of the workers was like, oh, we couldn't order. Mind you, winter time, it's really cold. Because we were spreading the virus because Curtis and I were not wearing a mask. And I was like, well, we're already inside. So all this back and forth, you could have just taken our order. We would have taken it out to go outside anyways because you couldn't even eat inside the restaurant because they were like, oh, people, at that time when people couldn't eat because of They took down the chairs, the tables, or spreading the virus, and then they come up with the stupidity. Oh, let's open up restaurants, but to go inside to walk, you have to have the mask on. But to sit down, the virus is smart; it stops there.
Exactly.
And so I said, I said slavery was legal. I said the Holocaust was legal. And the comments, like I had the Jewish community in Silver Spring, Maryland, was attacking me because I said, this is how it started. It's the same correlation. What part of that do you guys not see? I'm not understanding, or whatever the case may be. How can you get offended when I'm actually supporting and defending the Holocaust here?
Exactly. I had a friend, and I've lost numerous friends, but the purge needed to be done, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jewish, and I remember after they announced that Pfizer was approved, when it was just authorized, and that we as DOE employees needed to get it, she said, Pfizer approved, enough said, get it done. And so my response to her was like, a Jew who doesn't know the Nuremberg Code or never really learned about the Holocaust, what a shame. And she came back, she's like, I'm done with you. I said, you want to be middle school? That's okay. I'm like, I don't need you in my life, but I will always send you love and peace. And so, I wish you well. And she was just like, yeah, good luck to you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, this is someone who was supposedly a really good friend. And I thought she was more open-minded. I mean, I was questioning it before the COVID stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but, it's accelerated it and amplified it. So it was shocking. And then, I live in Manhattan, and there's a lot of Jewish people there, and it was pretty intense. Like I would look at them and say, did you not really learn the history? But then I also met Jewish people who saw it, and they were like, this is happening again. This is really dangerous. This is happening again. I'm like, thank God, like you learned.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, so it was a lot. And then me, I'm Puerto Rican, right? So they experimented on us as well. Like they experimented on all people. So I would look at the Puerto Rican community and I'd say, do you not remember what just happened in the 70s?
So
right then and there?
Can you talk about like what happened? Like if what happened in Puerto Rico when it came to like the mandates and all of that? How were Puerto Ricans taking that situation?
They fell for it. A lot of them fell for it. And I was surprised, and I would ask them, I said, do you remember, Dr. Rhodes and how he experimented on us and saw us as like vermin? And in the 70s, how they sterilized our women, and we were told that it was for our good, right? It wasn't that long ago, and you forgot that. And you see how the government is literally raping the island, has always raped the island. We've been invaded since the late 1800s. And you see people marching. Before COVID, you saw people marching, how the government was so corrupt and all that. And you believe them now over this virus?
Right.
I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
My uncle, when I told him, I lost my job, he was like, well, good for you, because you were threatening the lives of other people. And
what?
He was an activist. He was an activist, independentista in Puerto Rico, where he was like against the government.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, how is it that you,
out of all people,
believe this crap?
Mm-hmm.
And his wife, my aunt, she was like, I got vaccinated. I didn't want to. It's only because he pushed me to, but I'm not getting a third one.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, can you tell me more stuff? On the down low, can you tell me more stuff? But I was shocked with my uncle. I was totally shocked, but I don't live in Puerto Rico. I haven't visited often. So I was just like, listen, I can keep you far away. Thank God my mom's on my side. But yeah, in Puerto Rico, I heard people who said that when they wanted to visit their family members, they were like, did you get the third shot? Did you get the booster? Because if you don't have the third shot, you can't come visit us.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it was bad. I mean, at least my uncle did not prevent me from coming to see him, but it was still a shock. And then I had family members who were also fighting it there.
Mm-hmm.
One of my aunts, she had passed away from cancer in 2021, and the doctors were pushing her to get the shot.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, you're vulnerable, you're at risk. And she says, no, I'm not going to do it. Listen, if God wants me to go, God's going to take me, but it's not going to be because of the shot. And her daughter fought it. I have a cousin who has children with special needs. And she was just like, I don't care if I lose everything, if I lose my house, whatever. My children will not get vaccinated. I am not getting vaccinated. I do not want that poison in my body. So again, I was fortunate, that I had these people, my family, fueling, my activism in a different way. I've always been an activist, but it was, was totally different how we were all in the same boat, So it was very interesting.
So when the vaccine mandates finally came in for the DOE, I know you said that you were not going to get it, but still, like I knew people that told me to my face. I had been texting them. Like I had this one coworker. We were texting each other for a whole year. She sent me videos of people having reactions to the vaccine. She said she doesn't care. She's not going to take it. She's not going to take it. When it came down to it, she went and got it. But she claims that she's not going to allow her child to get it, which to me, I get that, but at the same time, but if you took it, then how am I supposed to even believe that?
Right.
And what if something happens to you, God forbid, because of the vaccine? Who's going to take care of your child? So many questions or whatever. So you were 100%. You can take away my livelihood. I'm not going to get it. Why?
It was... So I had seen the medical industrial complex, like how insanely powerful they were becoming and became years beforehand. And I saw that how they were pushing medications. I actually had there was 4 doctors. Before I turned 9 years old, 4 doctors almost took my life. So I kind of feel like it was in preparation for this in a very odd way. And even when I was 9, my grandmother told me, she was like, Raquelita, just so you know, you're meant to speak truth and you're going to have a very difficult life. But your job is to speak the truth for your whole life. Don't ever forget that. And she made me swear that I would always stay true to my purpose. She apparently saw my purpose. She was, clairvoyant. And with all this happening, I was like, Abuela, I hear you. I'm really reflecting on that conversation. I thought it was crazy at 9 years old. But now that I'm older and this is happening, thank God she had that conversation with me, because it's definitely sparked something. And I was able to go back and remember that so I can stay encouraged and sparked. So, having my life almost taken, having my grandmother's influence, seeing the medical industrial complex. When I was in my late 20s, I was doing volunteer work in Peru. And I was with a group of nurses who were vaccinating people for tetanus. And at that time, I was like, tetanus is okay. I don't know about all of them, but I believe tetanus is okay. And one of the parents in the village, I remember him saying, those things kill you. Those things, that's poison, that's poison, that's poison. He said, the white people came here before and they made promises to us. And look at what they did to us. They decimated our people. And now they bring these medicines to help us. He's like, no, it's to kill us. It's to kill us. He's like, you're not vaccinating me. You're not vaccinating my daughter. And he kept on yelling, and then, left. But as he left, he kept on yelling. So everyone in the village would hear. And the nurses who were from there said, that guy's crazy. That guy's crazy. And I stayed quiet. I said, I don't know. He may be onto something. Why don't we investigate what he said? So I was questioning it, vaccines and all that from way back when. But knowing that it takes at least 10.7 years to determine if it's safe. And then they said, after several months, a year? Was it a year max? This is safe. I was like, this is absolute BS. This is absolute BS. That's poison. And I've always had people throughout my life just share random things with me, strangers on the subway. People just start talking to me and will be like, this is going to happen. I remember even, I think maybe 6 years ago, someone was like, there's going to be FEMA camps and they're going to be rounding people up. And I was like, you know what? That's totally plausible.
Mhm.
And he said, thank you for listening. And he wanted to tell me more. And he actually was telling me more. So when all this started happening, I was like, yeah, this was, I was being dropped, gems were being dropped throughout my life
Mhm.
in preparation for this. So
Right.
that way I would not fall for the folly.
Mhm. When you were put on leave without pay initially, October 1st, 2021 was the last day for any DOE worker.
Mhm.
How were you able to get by? Because we couldn't even apply for unemployment.
So at that time, I was still able to work in person with early intervention, and they needed me to pick up more cases. They kept on asking me, and I was like, "Thank God, this is enough for me to pay my rent and buy groceries." So I had that, and then in December, when they said, "Oh, now you have to be vaccinated to be in person," I was like, "You've got to be kidding me!" Um, so I was still able to do teletherapy. So it wasn't as, it's not even as effective as being in person, but I at least had something to pay my rent. And then I was able to get some work upstate on Westchester, and then that fell through. And then something else fell through. So it was just like disappointment, disappointment, disappointment. And thank God I still had teletherapy. And then I was able to find some work in the summer upstate. And that, thank God for that, because that helped me buffer the debt that I incurred. Buffered. I still have plenty of debt.
Right. Yeah, like many other people,
yeah.
myself included.
And then I was able to work this fall. So that helped. And, thankfully, now I can go in person. And it's taking a while to get a caseload, but at least I have something. My heart goes out to people that couldn't do that. Yeah, but it wasn't easy. It was very frustrating. My mother, even though she lives in Florida and the vaccine mandates weren't affecting her, because the economy was affected, her job was affected. And I helped my mom. And now, I really can't help her the same way. So there's still a huge impact, but at least I was able to get something to pay rent and just do what I could just to get by.
Do you have any regrets for like standing off fighting the mandates? Because we have protested together. We became friends from those protests, actually. Remember one side outside of
freezing.
Linda Rosenthal, who's one of the assemblywoman that she was sponsoring the bill. I forgot the number. Was it A1179? I think so.
I don't remember, but we went
together.
Yeah. I brought the chalk.
Yes. Yeah, we were freezing, but we felt the need to tell people, because I feel like, had we not done that, people were just going to assume or think that everyone in New York was for the agenda. Mm-hmm. But no, there were a few of us that we were not for the bullshit. So I'm assuming you have absolutely no regrets. If this was to happen again, you would do it again.
100%. I think I would even be more strategic. Mm-hmm. But you never know. No regrets. Absolutely none.
Even though they took away your livelihood, it caused complications. You ended up in debt. You were discriminated against. Remember, you couldn't go to places because you were not vaxxed. And yeah, you still would do it again.
They didn't take my livelihood because I can still do it. Mm-hmm. It's just I have to do it differently.
You have to move.
I have to do differently. Mm-hmm. I don't have the comfortable job anymore. Now I really have to push myself. Not that I did it before, but like really exert.
Now it's different because you had to.
A lot of effort. Mm-hmm. But if anything, this I don't see myself as a victim. This strengthened my resolve. That's what it did. It reminded me that I'm stronger than I ever thought that I was. Like, I wanted to believe that this was going to pass. And when it didn't, it's like, okay, I made it through this month strong. I'm okay. Next month, I'm good. It gave me more faith in myself. So would I ever think about getting any type of medical intervention that I didn't want? Hell fucking no. To the day I took my last breath, till this flesh suit is done, You cannot force me to do something that goes against my will, because I am here because something divine lives in me. I am connected to absolute divinity. We are all divine. We are all divine. And to give in to bullshit is like a smack in the face to what created us. It's like saying, the stardust you put in me, the love you put in me was for nothing. I don't trust you. I trust man-made crap. No, I trust what created me. I trust the love that created me and lives inside me. And that's the love that I give to others. And that's what makes me very impassioned. So that way I can be of service to others. Like I said, since I was young, I knew I had to be of service to others. I just didn't know how intensely. I've risked my life before, going to refugee camps. When I volunteered on my vacation time. So I'm like, okay, well, this is just another tour, I guess you can say. You know how the military has tours? Mm-hmm. This is just another tour. And this is for me to get stronger and for me to be more creative and for me to really step into my divinity instead of relying on, mm-hmm. my meat suit, my humanity. I have to step into my true self.
Mm-hmm. Right. Wow, Rocco, that you said a lot, but I want to thank you so much for agreeing to do this. This means a lot because I want people to understand what happened here. Yeah, it's 2023. Things seems like they're going back to normal, quote unquote. But are they really going back to normal? And should we just go along with this now and pretend like nothing happened, like people's lives were not affected, like we were not discriminated against? I don't think that's the proper way to solve this issue. And I think everyone needs to take accountability for what happened. Right. And yeah, so I thank you so much. And I hope that the viewer finds this valuable just like I did. It was pretty good. A lot of the things that you said, especially when you spoke about Puerto Rico and things like that, it's pretty good. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.